In this video, we're going to be looking at three new vocabulary items. The first is alias, alia, aliud, the word in Latin for other. The second is the word aliquis, aliqua, aliquid, and the related form aliqui, aliqua, aliquod. And finally, the word ipse, ipsa, ipsum. All three of these are treated in the grammar for 4b on pages 216 to 18. Your book introduces two new words together. Alias, alia, aliud, which means another or other, and aliquis, aliqua, aliquid, which means someone or something. Your book presents these words as if they were closely related. In some sense they are. Aliquis comes from the stem of alius plus the word quis. But really, they are very different words that should be considered separate entities. So although your book presents these two words right next to each other as if they were related, it's probably best to think of them as very different things. Let's start with alias, alia, aliud. This is a word that means other. It is declined like multus, multum, multum, that is a normal first and second declension adjective, except the following. The nominative and accusative neuter singular is aliud. That's obvious up here, and of course the accusative will have to be the same form because that's neuter, and nominative and accusative forms always have to be the same in the neuter. The genitive singular for all three genders is alius, and by the way is quite rare. When you look at alius, which is very rare, you might think of words like istius, the genitive of iste, or ilius, the genitive ille. We've seen this genitive of ending of ius many times now. The dative singular of all three genders is alii. By the way, alias, alia, aliud, which means other, also expresses the idea of different in Latin. If I say alium canem vidi, that in Latin can mean I saw another dog, or merely I saw a different dog. Alias, alia, aliud is the closest word that Latin really has to the English word different. Let's talk for a moment about words for other in English. English uses the and to alter the meaning of other. The other, for instance, other with the word the, is often used for groups of two. If I say give me the other wrench, the implication is probably that there are two wrenches and I want the other of two. Another and other and others, using the word an at the beginning of other or nothing at all, are usually used for groups of three or more. If I say give me another wrench, the implication is probably that we have three or more wrenches available and I want another one. If I say I have other wrenches, once again we have a group of three or more wrenches. And if I say I have others, if we're talking about wrenches, I'm probably talking about a group of three or more. Contrast that with the other wrench, which may imply that there are only two wrenches. So we use the to indicate that we're talking about only a group of two, whereas we use or nothing to indicate that we're talking about a group of three or more. The other plus a plural noun, or the others, means the rest or the remaining. If I say give me the other wrenches, I mean the remaining wrenches. If I say give me the others, I mean give me the rest of them. So when we use the plus a plural with the word other, we're talking about all the rest of the wrenches of a group of three or more. Latin does not do this. That is, it doesn't use the or to alter the meaning of the word other. That, of course, is because it does not have a word for or the. It can't do that. Instead, Latin has four words for other that cover this territory. The first is one we learned long, long ago. It's the word alter, altera, altrum. That is used to refer to the other of two. So if you have two objects and you want to say the other, you use the word alter. Alias, alia, aliud, the word we're learning right now, is used to refer to another or others of a group of three or more. So if you have three or more objects, you refer to another from that group as using this word, alias, in the singular, or you refer to several of them, that is, several others, with the plural of it. Ceteri, ceteri, cetera means the rest of the remaining. It usually appears only in the plural. It can be used in the singular, but that's rare. Reliquis, reliqua, reliquo means the rest or the remaining. It appears in both the singular and the plural. It means pretty much the same as ceteri, ceteri, cetera, except it can also be used in the singular. So, instead of using the or a, Latin has 4 separate words for other that allow Latin to make the same sorts of distinctions English does, but without the words a or the. You may remember that when we use the word alter, sometimes it is used twice in a row to mean the one and the other, or the first and the second. Here's an example. If I say, alterem bacchidem amo et alterem odi, this means, I love the one Bacchus, and I hate the other Bacchus. Odi, by the way, is a word that means I hate. Even though it looks perfect, it's actually present in meaning, and it means I hate. So, I hate the one, or I'm sorry, I love the one Bacchus, and I hate the other. Which, of course, can also be translated, I love the first Bacchus, and I hate the second. Similarly, alias, alia, aliud, when used more than once in a row in the singular, means one, another. Here's an example. Alius ingreditur et alias egreditur. This means one man, alius, is going in, ingreditur, and et, another, alias, is going out, egreditur. So one man is going in, and another is going out. When used more than once in a row in the plural, it can mean some and others. For instance, alii egrediuntur et alii egrediuntur means some people, aliae, are going in, ingrediuntur, and et, others, alii egrediuntur, are going out. So, ali, the first ali means some people, the second one means others. This brings us to a difficult topic for English speakers. Latin is very fond of using alias, alia, aliud in different cases in the same clause. Here's an example. Alius, aliud vidit. This is the nominative masculine singular, and this is the accusative neuter singular. This means something like a different person, alius, vidit, saw. This is the past tense of see, this is saw. A different person saw a different thing. A better translation into English might be one person saw one thing and another person saw another thing. This is a trick that Latin does with the word alias that English cannot replicate. What Latin is doing is creating the notion that there's this group of 3 or more people and they're each having a different experience. And this is conveyed by this double use of alias in different cases. These expressions can occur in the singular or plural, and it makes no difference in meaning. Here's an example. Alius aliud vidit, which we just saw, means a different person saw a different thing, or better translated perhaps, one person saw one thing and another person saw another thing. This expression here means exactly the same as alii alia viderunt. Some people saw some things and other people saw others. It really doesn't matter whether you do this expression in the singular or plural, the meaning is the same. What this conjures up is the notion that you have a group of 3 or more things and they're each experiencing or doing or in some way or another undergoing different sorts of experiences individually. And that's what this expression means. There are many adverbs related to alias, alia, aliud. Important ones are the words alias, or I should say in Latin, alius, at another time. This, by the way, is where the English word alias comes from when you talk about a person's alternate name. For instance, if I were to say John alias Bugsy Rundon, what I'm really saying is John, at another time, Bugsy Rundon. From that sort of expression comes the word alias, which refers to a person's name on another occasion. Another word along these lines is alibi. Alibi means at another place. Ibi you might recognize as a word for there, and al means other, so this is at another place. And you probably know this word as someone's alibi in English. An alibi is your statement of where you were so that you couldn't have committed a crime, for instance, because you were someplace else. And that comes from the Latin word alibi, which means at another place. So alias in Latin means at another time, and alibi in Latin means at another place. And these expressions, too, can be used in this goofy double sort of expression here, like alias haec facit. This means a different person does this at a different time. In other words, one person does this at one time and another at another time. By the way, watch out for the adjective alienus, aliena, alienum, which is from alias, alia, aliud. In Latin, it is used as the possessive of alias, alia, aliud. It means of another person, or which equals someone else's. In other words, if I say aliena mala non me vexant, this means the troubles of another person do not bother me. The troubles of another person do not bother me. Aliena mala are the troubles of another person or someone else's troubles, you could say too. So this is really Latin for I don't worry about someone else's troubles. By the way, this is one reason the genitive alias, alia, aliud is rare. You may remember that I told you that the genitive is very rare. This word is used instead for possession. You don't use the genitive of the word alias, alia, aliud for possession. Instead, use the special adjective alienus. In 4b, two important words are introduced. The first one is aliquis, aliqua, aliquid. This word declines pretty much like quis quid with an ali up front. It means someone in the masculine and feminine and something in the neuter. So the masculine and feminine forms of this mean someone. Like the masculine means someone and the feminine would be some woman, typically. And in the neuter it means something. So if I say aliquid vidi, that means I saw something. If I say cum aliquo colloquebar, that means I was conversing or I was talking with someone. There is a related form, and this is the second important word that's present, aliqui, aliqua, aliquod. This word declines pretty much like qui, qui, quod, with an ali up front. It means some, as in the sense of someone or other. I might say, in via servum aliquem semper videbam. I always used to see, semper videbam, I always used to see some slave on the road. In other words, some slave or other.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger! Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
A word of warning. This is how your book displays the declension of aliquis, aliqua, aliquid, and aliqui, aliqua, aliquod. What happens is that when you look at this chart, students almost always, when they look at this chart, they assume that this is the plural of this. It's not. This is the singular of aliquis, aliqua, aliquod, and this is the singular of aliqua, qui, aliqua, aliquod. They don't show you the plural. If you want to learn how to do the plural, you have to read the note below. So this is the singular of aliquis, aliqua, aliquid. This is the singular of aliqui, aliqua, aliquod. This is not the plural. This is not the plural of this. Let's move on now to talking about ipse, ipsa, ipsum. First, I have to make a little note on self forms in English. We have seen forms like myself, yourself, himself, and so on as reflexives in English. For instance, I see myself in the mirror. This is reflexive. You see yourself, or I see myself, and myself is pointing back to the I subject. Or I hurt myself skiing, where myself head points back to the I subject there. English self forms have a second use. They are also intensive pronouns. Let me show you what an intensive pronoun is. If you say something, I myself want to do nothing to do with that, myself is called an intensive pronoun. It intensifies the meaning of I. I myself want nothing to do with that. This is not a reflexive here. This is an intensive pronoun. It's a very different thing. Here's another example. They have to solve the problem themselves. This is not a reflexive. This is an intensive pronoun, and it's intensifying the notion of they. The Latin intensive is ipse, ipsa, ipsum. For instance, in Latin, I can say haec fece ipse. I did this myself, where the ipse means myself. Or milites ipse aquam ferent. The soldiers themselves are carrying the water. Alternately, you could translate this as the very soldiers are carrying the water. Sometimes we do the intensive, we translate the intensive Latin with the very. The very soldiers are carrying the water. Here's the declension of ipse, ipsa, ipsum, just for your enjoyment. I'll let you take a look at that. It's actually very easy. Now, because the English intensive and reflexive look alike, it's easy for English-speaking Latin students to confuse the two. I hope you grasp what I'm trying to say. English uses these self forms as both reflexives and as intensives. That means that English speakers get confused. In fact, reflexives are completely different from intensives, and Latin uses different words. Don't confuse the two. We'll be talking a lot about this in class, but don't confuse the reflexive and the intensive. By the way, one little hint. If you remove an intensive, the sentence will mean this more or less the same. Here's an example. I myself don't believe you. You can remove the myself here, which is an intensive, and you'll still have I don't believe you. That makes sense. But if you try to remove the reflexive myself here, this is a reflexive, you wind up with I saw in the mirror, which doesn't make sense at all. So one way to tell an intensive from a reflexive is that you can remove an intensive and the sentence will still mean more or less the same thing. If you remove the reflexive, the sentence won't mean the same thing, or maybe even not even make sense at all. So let's take a look at one common problem in Latin. Let's look at this. Marcus dicit se Juliam amare. This means Marcus says himself to love Julia, right? Marcus says himself to love Julia. This is a reflexive. It's an indirect reflexive and indirect statement referring back to Marcus. Marcus says himself to love Julia. And this essentially means Marcus says that he loves Julia. This does not mean that Marcus says that he himself loves Julia. This is an intensive. This is a reflexive. This is a wrong translation. This sentence here merely means Marcus says that he loves Julia. It does not mean that Marcus says that he himself loves Julia. If you wanted to say that Marcus says that he himself loves Julia, you would have to use the intensive pronoun, and you'd have to have some form of ipse. So watch out for that. I'll be pointing that out in class as we read Latin. But that's a very common mistake that people make. They see the reflexive pronoun in indirect statement, and they think it's an intensive pronoun because they're misled by their English sense. But reflexive pronouns are completely different from intensive pronouns, and it's important not to confuse them. The end. This has been a Barking Blue Heeler production.